This is Chuck Huber, the voice of Android 17. You're listening to Anime Seekers. You better be, or I'm coming for you. Dragon of the Darkness, Flame!
Jedi Squadron is a podcast run by the Anime Secrets website. Check us out at animesecrets.org for more anime, video game, tokusatsu, and now Star Wars content. Remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts today.
Hello, new Padawans, and welcome to the Jedi Squadron podcast. Here, you will be taking lessons in the many pieces of the Star Wars universe, whether it be the movies, animated series, video games, comics, and etc. This is your training into becoming a Star Wars fan as part of the Jedi Squadron. May your training go well, and may the Force be with you, young Padawans. What's going on, Star Wars Nation? This is the Jedi Squadron podcast presented by AnimeSecrets.org. I'm your host, Nathan and
I'm Rizwan Merchant.
And today we are wrapping up our review of the Acolyte. We're taking a look at the finale, this season finale, hopefully not series. We don't know if it's been picked up for season 2 as of yet, but at least for right now, the season 1 finale, which also shares the name of the show, The Acolyte. We are going to review the episode and then give our overall thoughts on the show as well. For those who want the recap of everything that's happened, check out our other podcasts on the previous Acolyte episodes. We got a lot to talk about right now. So without further ado, let's jump right in. The previous episode was mostly a flashback. So this episode takes us, back to the present, where it opens up with the stranger. He forcibly removes his cortosis mask from Osha. Osha reveals that while she was wearing the mask, she saw a vision of May killing Soul without a weapon, and this causes the stranger to believe that May still might have some promise as a potential pupil of his. So he decides to go find her, and Osha goes with him since she knows where Soul and May are going, and they leave in their ship. During which a mysterious figure is shown watching them. As far as I know, I don't think Leslie Halen has come out and officially said it, but let's be honest here, guys. That's Darth Plagueis. That's Darth Plagueis watching them.
I believe I saw something, and for the life of me, I can't remember if it's an official interview or if it's just some fan-made content on one of the many social medias I frequent. But I have seen something saying that Leslie is a great fan of the Darth Plagueis novel that came out in 2012.
And Star Wars Explained also told me that when I was watching his review. So,
He told you? Like you're personal friends with him now?
Yeah, I guess you could say it.
You meet him once in a movie theater.
Yeah, well, he said that in his review of this episode. So, yeah.
Yeah, I saw something about it where they said that Leslie was a big fan of that novel, which, going off on a slight tangent here, I do find it funny that people say that Leslie doesn't know anything about Star Wars when she clearly has read some of the Legends continuity in the past.
Yeah, speaking of which, I need to read that novel. That should be one of my Legends priorities for this podcast.
I should probably read it to you just out of curiosity, but I don't know. I have a lot of things to read still.
Yeah. But anyway, so Soul and May, they've arrived at Brendock above the surface. Soul wants to come clean to Vernestra about everything that he did. But he also, he's basically doubling. So remember, in the previous episode, May saw him straight up kill their mother. Soul, not really sure what he was hoping to accomplish with this, but he actually defends right to May's face what he did, saying that he ultimately, that killing their mother was the right thing to do. And May is not too happy about that. She breaks free of her restraints with help from Pitt. Then she escapes on the escape ship, and we get this big chase through an asteroid field which ultimately results in the two ships losing control and crashing onto Brendok's surface. Just around this time, May and no, not May, Osha and the Stranger arrive on Brendok as well, and they all arrive in the ruins of the Coven's old fortress. And while the Stranger and Soul are, kind of battling it out in a lightsaber duel, May confronts Osha. She tells her that Soul killed their mother, and they get in their own fight. And eventually, May retreats just as Soul has the Stranger more or less cornered. And, she takes up the Stranger's lightsaber, and the Stranger tells her to finish Soul off. And Osha walks in just in time to hear Soul basically confess that that he killed their mother, confirming to her. And not only that, he also reveals the truth about what they discovered about how May and Osha were born, which I'm going to come back to this because this is kind of interesting when we talk about the Easter eggs portion of this. Osha's overheard him say that, and Soul once again attempts to justify what he did, but Osha gets enraged and she uses the Force to choke him to death. He looks content with dying there. And as she does, she's holding Soul's lightsaber, and the Kyber crystal in Soul's lightsaber turns red. I'll talk a little bit about this concept because this is actually not despite what some people are complaining about online, this is not the first time that something like this has actually happened.
I must have missed that comment section.
Yeah.
You have to fill me in later in this podcast, I guess.
Yeah. But so after that happens, everybody flees. Vernestra and a team of Jedi arrive on Brendok. They located Soul when he turned his ship's transponder back on. And Vernestra senses the Stranger's presence, and she finds Soul body in the ruins, and she briefly sees the Stranger. And the Stranger finds May and Osha. Osha agrees to go with him to train while May is allowed to live, but the Stranger uses the Force to wipe May's memory before the two leave, and May gets arrested by the Jedi. Vernestra pretty much covers the whole thing up. She says that Soul basically killed all the Jedi that were killed by May as part of his bigger cover-up story. And then she tries to interrogate May, but it turns out that May's memory has been completely wiped. And she wants to help May recover her memories, but she also enlists May help in trying to find her old Padawan, that being the Stranger. So yeah, Riz, you can do that little victory lap of yours because you predicted that she was going to be the Stranger's master in one of the previous podcasts. So yeah, that's a big victory lap for Riz, isn't it, guys?
I've been saying this from the beginning, and nobody listens to me. They all say Riz is crazy. I tell them Vanestra is going to be the master. Everyone's like, no, Riz, you're crazy. That's too predictable. I'm like, it's going to happen. Just like I said in the beginning, who the Stranger was going to be. That Kimmer was the Sith Lord. I called it, and everyone told me, Riz, there's no way. He's too wimpy looking. He can't be the Sith Lord. I'm like, you just wait one episode and you're going to find out. And maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was 2 episodes later. But still, I knew from the beginning. But nobody wanted to listen to me. That is my rant. I am vindicated finally on something.
Yep. But and yeah, so while Osha and the Stranger are now back on whatever that planet was called, they're back together to begin their training, and the episode ends as Vernestra goes to approach a very familiar looking Jedi Master. Can't remember what his name is. He's very short. He's old. He speaks backwards. Can't figure out what his name is.
He looks very similar to that really cool guy that's named Grogu.
Oh, yeah. I think his name was Yoda.
Yeah, or Yaddle.
Yeah, but that was a pretty cool cameo.
Yeah.
Just a couple of Easter eggs to talk about just briefly here. I mean, there is one big Easter egg that we can talk about when we analyze this thing, but probably the important thing to note. So The whole idea of OSHA getting, and the main reason why I want to talk about the Easter eggs is just so Riz and I can spend the back half of the back part of his podcast just analyzing everything. So let's just get this over with. So the idea of the stranger's helmet being able to possess OSHA is very consistent with Sith helmets being able to possess people. The most prominent of this happening in canon before is the mask of Exam Pashard. This mask possessed in the around the post original trilogy era. A Pantoran woman named Kiza got possessed by a Sith mask. This was shown in both the Aftermath trilogy and Shadow of the Sith novel. I've actually read both these things, so pretty interesting to know that. Like I said, we were shown Darth Plagueis here. At least as far as that appearance was concerned, he appears to still be a moon, the same species as the aliens who run the banking clan in the prequel trilogy. Okay, this next Easter egg, I'm gonna wait until Riz and I do the analysis portion. But the big thing about OSHA being able to turn Soul's lightsaber red. So there were some people that were complaining, just saying that this was. I mean, I saw some people complaining about this on Twitter, but no, this has happened before. This is a process called bleeding. Um, which so here's the thing: red is not a natural color for a kyber crystal, but if a Jedi pours all of their pain, rage, and hatred into a crystal, it turns red. Um, and not only that, but OSHA doing it to Soul's lightsaber is also particularly interesting because there's something called the Sith rite of passage where someone must kill a Jedi and then bleed the kyber crystal of their lightsaber, which is exactly what OSHA does to Soul's lightsaber. This has been shown in some comics, and it's apparently been shown in the Jedi Survivor video game. I haven't played that game yet, although I'm hoping to very soon. The only thing that's new here is that the lightsaber changing from blue to red. That hasn't happened before. In all other past iterations, the lightsaber is just immediately turned red upon ignition. But that's probably just done to convey to the audience OSHA's slow turn to the dark side. And finally, the stranger using the Force to wipe May's memory is similar to how the Jedi used the Force to wipe the memory of the Sith Lord Darth Revan in the Knights of the Old Republic video game. So that's it for the Easter eggs. So yeah, Riz, I just spoke for almost 12 minutes. You want to chime in with some of your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah. So I'm I'm having a bit of a mental block here on how I feel about this episode as a whole, and how does my opinion of the entire season, and given what we've seen throughout the last couple of weeks. Um, because on one hand, I do see a lot of bad writing that we've already went into pretty good detail on last episode that I just have trouble with. But I will give some credit to this episode for doing a good job at making things interesting and bringing things up that I wasn't particularly expecting to see happen. And the big one that I didn't expect to see happen was the bleeding. Now, I've
Yeah.
known what bleeding is for the longest time, but I didn't expect to see it happen here. And so I haven't read the comment section that you're talking about, Nate, on Twitter with people getting mad about the bleeding process. But I will make a comment. Listening to your explanation of the Sith rite of passage lines up with what I know about the bleeding process in general and the entire Sith lore. However, that does bring up a question to me about a scene that we'll see in episode 3 of the prequel trilogy when Anakin is just slaughtering the younglings. How did he not bleed his lightsaber from blue to red?
I hmm, that yeah that I don't know
Because
that,
because
but
to, because to
but to
me,
be
the way I
fair,
see it,
I don't think that's a plot hole that this show is necessarily brought
no,
up because
no, no,
it's
no,
been
no,
done.
no.
But
It's not
that
a
is a good point.
it's not a plot hole for this show because it's not Anakin wasn't in this TV show, right? But
Yeah,
um, part of my understanding of the Sith rite of passage and the Kyber crystal bleeding is pumping enough hate, anger, resentment, whatever you want to call it, into yourself, into the Kyber crystal to bleed it red. And I kind of so I understand Osa had a lot of hate against Soul at this point. I get it. But I don't think it's necessarily the type of hate that I would expect to be the thing to make it bleed, given Anakin didn't bleed his. Simply because Osa's Osa's kind of hatred was more familial with the loss of the mother, understanding Soul's deception and all that. So there's like a directed feel to her anger. Like you could understand why it happened. Anakin's anger was not as well directed, in my opinion, on episode 3. I mean, yeah, he's
yeah,
definitely hating and he's angry, but I, to be honest with you, the rationale for why he's angry at the point when he's slaughtering the youngling, eh, I get it, but also, like I just don't think that Osa's anger was something I would consider to be enough to trigger the bleeding.
yeah. But with Anakin's, I might defend that a little bit. Like, why didn't it happen when he was killing the younglings? I would think maybe it's not necessary. Maybe at that point in the scene, he wasn't necessarily pouring all of his anger and hatred and all of the negative traits there. I think it was more of, I don't know, like, again, like, it's not really well conveyed, unfortunately, due to like some of the subpar writing with the prequel movies. But like, I would imagine that maybe, I guess in my little headcanon, Anakin is not really attacking those younglings out of like hate and anger or anything. It's more just of a desire of, well, this is all to save Padme. Maybe I don't want to do this, but I have to save Padme. So there's like some, he's not doing it out of an evil malice or anything. It's more just out of a,
Necessity.
yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It just I don't know. It just seems weird to me how easily Osa got it. It doesn't really feel earned to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm 100% behind that part.
Like, I don't know. To me, it just seems like a very difficult process and a lot of time. And honestly, in my opinion, you got to study it a little bit as well. You can't just blindly be angry without understanding what you're doing. You have to be directing that anger to do this willingly, I think.
Hmm.
And Osa's not doing it. She doesn't know the ritual for bleeding. I don't think, anyway. I mean, that's just the effect of what happened.
I
So,
mean, go ahead.
so to me, it just seems like I think I think it's really cool that we saw bleeding in here, and I know for certain that we've had it before in like Jedi Survivor, and I think I've read about it in some obscure Legends continuity stuff in the past, but I don't quite know where it was. But I think Osa getting to do it kind of cheapens the value of it because it shouldn't have been that easy for her to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I get what you're saying there. I think the bigger problem that I have is just that, and to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying to like give my main criticism here, like so I expected Soul to probably die in this episode. I had a feeling that he was going to, but the fact that like OSHA does it, I don't know, like it felt very
Out of
I don't
character.
not only that, but I just felt kind of underwhelmed. But like when Yord and Jeki were killed, I felt like, oh my god, that was horrible, but like in a good
Yeah.
way. But in the case of like Soul's death, it just feels incredibly clumsy. Like OSHA and Soul have had this really close relationship. Like they've been shown to like she's been shown to still have admiration for Soul even after she's left the Order. Then she gets taken away, and then the first time she's seen Soul after being taken away, she's already just kind of been driven angry, and she's already trying to kill him. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like there should have been a bit more build up to her. And
There there should have been a lot of build up, and that's part of why I feel like this is unearned. And that's kind of what I was trying to word, but I couldn't quite put to word what I was feeling. But I think you just summed up a larger problem with it. I don't think the writing here was all that great.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, first of all, I think one of the bigger problems with this episode is that, well, first of all, it if you hadn't kind of spoiled this twist for us, like with the fact that like Soul killed Mother Anastasia in the previous episode with the flashback, if you had just had the previous episode revolving more around maybe conveying to us, more about Soul's relationship with OSHA, like through a couple of flashbacks, and then maybe have OSHA learn the truth about their mother in the previous episode, and then her spending the whole time denying it, and then leading to the climax of this episode where she finally discovers the truth, and that's when she finally gets angry and kills him. Then it probably would have paid off a little bit more, and that's ironically enough, that kind of makes me rank the previous episode a bit lower, honestly, because I feel like it wasted a slot that could have been better dedicated building up to this moment where Osha's going to kill Soul.
All right, so time to do a quick retcon. Your 4 is now a 3, my 3 is now a 2. Carry on.
Yeah, fair enough.
But no, so going back to the scene, well, the entire episode really, and this kind of leads into a broader concern that I so I read this on Reddit, so I'm not going to take credit for having this opinion on my own, but I do think this opinion makes a lot of sense. Um, when we begin the Acolyte, we're given two twins with very different personalities, very different goals and aims and philosophies. Osa is more kind of passive and um, probably going through a little bit of imposter syndrome because she didn't stay with the Jedi Order. We find out later on she didn't stay because she couldn't manage her emotions with the loss of May and the family and all that, which is probably why Anakin was denied in the beginning the first time Qui-Gon asked to make him an apprentice because he was too old, according to Yoda. Like Yoda knew. So, and we'll get to that line. Yoda knew a little bit later on with something else, but that's Osa's personality. Whereas May has been angry from day one. May has always been upset with everything having to do with the four Jedi that basically killed her entire coven, losing her sister, knowing that these Jedi are the ones that did it, and just all that anger build up. And then, to me, looking back at it, and after reading that post on Reddit, it does seem a little flip floppy with how easily May goes from being this cold blooded killer that wants to just avenge her family and her coven to being willing to, in a split second, give herself up to Kilnaka and the Jedi Order at large, while Osa goes from being that timid girl who was a former Jedi who couldn't hack it to being seduced so easily through the stranger's words to follow more of a dark side twist of the Force, and ultimately ending with her being, on the path to being some kind of dark side user. I'm not going to call her a Sith because I don't even think the stranger's a Sith. So it's just kind of flippy to me to see them both do like a 180, because at the end of the day, Osa could have been the one that had her memory wiped because she didn't want to get her sister in trouble. And May could have been the one that said, okay, I'm going to embrace my darkness that I've had all these years, and I'm going to go off and learn from the stranger. That would have been better writing to me. It would have been a bit more cliche and probably more predictable, but it would have been stronger writing in my opinion.
Yep.
I don't know. What do you think about all that? Because I spoke a lot there.
Yeah, I just feel like I definitely agree that Osha's turn to the dark side just feels, I don't know. I just feel the more I think about it that Osha's turn to the dark side, I want to be super into it because the more I think about it, I feel like the show was trying to convey that she was going to fall, but I just think that we needed some more time with her and the stranger. And again, this kind of goes back to the fact that, they wasted a whole episode on a flashback, the previous one, with that and the only purpose that that flashback episode even serves in the first place is that Soul killed Mother Anastasia. That's pretty much the whole point of the previous episode. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah.
And you could have just revealed that in a very brief flashback and just kind of showed more of the stranger kind of slowly pulling Osha to the dark side. I don't know. Like, it just feels incredibly rushed to
It
the point where I really hate to say this, but I used to criticize how quick Anakin's turn to the dark side in Revenge of the Sith wasn't handled as great. Now, to be fair, my opinion on that has kind of warmed up significantly since I watched the Clone Wars, as has a lot of people.
yeah.
But in this case, even if I had never watched, even if the Clone Wars didn't exist and we had nothing to give more context to Anakin's character in Revenge of the Sith, I would still say that that's handled a lot better than this because at least with Anakin, I get the idea. Okay, he's wanting to save Padme, and Palpatine has been tempting him ever since that whole scene with the opera scene. So I can get behind that, but
Well, but
here,
also Palpatine's been grooming him from day one.
yeah,
I mean
but
that.
here it just feels incredibly rushed.
Yeah.
Like
It,
you said, it just doesn't feel earned.
no, it's not earned, and also it just seems like, okay. So taking a closer look at the writing of the season as a whole, you harped a lot on one flashback episode we had, but we had another flashback episode in, I think, episode 3, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Uh huh.
And, that was a good flashback. We got some good info on the background, but I think a lot of this different flashback stuff we got for whole episodes would have been served better if the writing team and the production team had decided to just do like little bitty clips here and there, giving brief snippets of what's going on, not giving the whole story, but kind of breaking it apart. Because I don't remember how you felt about the Acolyte before we began podcasting. What you're expecting, but I was expecting more of like a murder mystery kind of whodunit type thing
Mm-hmm.
set in the Star Wars universe. But the entire exposition of whodunit is done in 2 episodes, and then the rest of the 6 remaining episodes is like well, how do we go from here they are in the present day to where they are at the end of the season where we want them, using all this exposition. There's not like any quick, here's a flashback to when Soul did this thing. Here's a flashback to when Indara said that one line that changed the entire thing around, or whatever. Like, we could have done things that way, but we didn't. And I think that hurts this a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and that's part of why I say that the Acolyte's writing as a whole leaves a ton to be desired. A ton.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I don't know. To me, the best parts of the Acolyte, because I do want to give a sandwich of stuff that I like positive in the middle before we go back to ripping it apart. I do like seeing the the dark side of the Jedi, as you may, where you and I grew up watching Star Wars, Nate. We've already did a whole podcast talking about that journey we had in life with watching Star Wars and everything.
Yep.
And I don't know, when I watched the originals and the prequels, I never really felt like the Jedi were corrupt or they brought their downfall down on themselves. I always thought, man, the Jedi just had some bad luck. They really got effed up, like they really didn't see it coming. They got destroyed. They were outmaneuvered. And they're this noble breed of people who are just out there trying to save humanity and trying to do all this good stuff. But then when you start to introduce other things to Star Wars, I'm looking at the Acolyte. I'm looking at some of the Clone Wars. I'm looking a lot at Tales of the Jedi and a handful of other just small things across the entire franchise. You start to realize that the Jedi are not really good people as a whole. And if you really stop and do a deep analysis of the Jedi, their philosophy is kind of broken. I mean, what kind of people really believe attachment is something to be lost and not to be used as like a way to use the Force? I think what Luke does later on, at least in the Legends continuity, I don't really know if I like what Luke did in the sequel trilogy as much, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely I like how Luke kind of revamped the Jedi Order to say, okay, we tried it this way, but let's try it a different way. And he ends up at some point marrying Mara Jade and they have kids together. So I mean, he clearly has an attachment to the wife and kids. So they seem to be more okay with that concept of attachment later. And I think that's why Luke's Jedi Order in Legends is a little bit more successful than what we got in the prequels and what we get in the High Republic. And so I do like that the Acolyte really helped bring out the darker side of the Jedi Order for us.
Yep.
So that's one positive I'm going to give the TV show right now. However, the writing, again, leaves a lot to be desired, and honestly, they need to really tighten it up a lot. Because we could have gone the entire season without needing to introduce Kimmer, introduce the Stranger, and just focused on the twin story. That would have been a tighter story, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could have had Kimmer be there, being a friend of May, but not really being like the stranger. And he could have just been there, like egging her on, giving her advice, supporting her as a friend. And then next season, if we got a second season, we could start getting the revelation of, oh no, he's actually the Darth Lord. Like that could have been a lot better writing to me.
I mean, I think to me, the way I'm gonna feel about them just kind of introducing Chimera's the Stranger is really going to depend on whether or not we get a season two. Because here's the thing about about the Acolyte. Um, if if it turns out that this is the only season of the Acolyte we're gonna get, and again, we don't know just yet, and we'll bring up whether or not we're going to get a season two when it gets announced on the podcast. But if there is no season two, honestly, I feel like the way that this season ended, it, I don't know. This felt like a real, like it was kind of open ended where, okay, there's potential for another season. But if it ends here, okay, I mean, it's fine. I mean, because we can kind of connect the dots a little bit more with like the Phantom Menace and like, how we're seeing corruption in the Senate and, we're seeing, issues with the Jedi and also seeing, events that are going to lead to the eventual rise of the Sith, as shown in the prequels. And because ultimately everything that happens to the Jedi in the High Republic is tied to the eventual fate of the Jedi in the prequels. I mean, it's not like Ahsoka. If Ahsoka, and thankfully Ahsoka is getting a second season, but if Ahsoka wasn't getting a second season, I would feel kind of cheated because the way that show ends, you have to have a second season. This
Yeah.
one, not so much. But if they do have a second season, then I'm probably going to hold true a lot to your criticisms, which is the idea that you could focus more on the relationship between the twins and maybe keep the stranger in the shadows a little bit, but kind of wait until at least the season 1 finale to for him to come out. Now, if it turns out that there is no season 2, then I can tolerate that a bit more. But again,
Mm,
I have
no,
to.
even with no season 2, I'd rather them have not done it this way.
And why is that?
I because it just seems like a lot of moving parts for little to no payoff. Like, what are we gaining from having him be introduced as a Sith Lord or as a dark side user? Like, what is his purpose to be the stranger?
I mean, the more I think about it, and this is just kind of coming into my head right now, but I think it's possible that I don't know. Maybe Kamir isn't necessarily a Sith Lord or a Sith at all. Maybe he's just more of like a little pawn in the game that Plagueis is playing here, because again we've established that his cortosis mask has some special powers and it's possessed him. So how do we know? So possibly maybe Plagueis found Kamir when he was a kid and gave him this mask. And well, actually no, then again we don't know how old he was when he would have turned, because I mean he was a former pupil of Ernestra. but
Yeah,
again but again that mask might have played a huge part in it, because again I brought up this when I was talking about the Easter eggs. We've seen an example of Kiza. She, as far as I'm concerned, was able to use the Force, but she was also like possessed by this mask that was being held by like a cult of like ancient Sith worshippers. So she herself was not a Sith Lord, but she was doing the bidding of ancient Sith. So
yeah,
maybe he kind of fills a similar role that Kiza does. And what's funny is that, I mean, in a lot of ways, like in some ways, you could say that Kamir also kind of plays a part in Palpatine's whole story. Because okay, here's the Easter egg I was going to bring up. You might notice that when Sol is explaining to May that how she and Osha were created, Kamir kind of gives a look as if, hey, that sounds like an interesting concept. Like using the Force to create life. Well, what is it that Palpatine says that Darth Plagueis developed the ability to do in Revenge of the Sith? Use the midi chlorians to create life.
yeah.
So I Plagueis had to learn that power from somewhere. So I would imagine that maybe this is how he learned about it. Just a little side note though.
Yeah, but see, my problem with the season, I know this isn't a direct answer to what you just said, Nate, but the thing that bugs me the most, I think, is okay, so we can look at the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and we kind of know what was the purpose of it, what did it give us, what was it meant to give us, right? Like, it meant to give us some more info on what Obi-Wan was up to between the events of when he went to exile, and when the New Hope began. We know what Ahsoka's doing. Ahsoka is bridging the gap from Rebels to after the events that Return of the Jedi and kind of after everything to do with, well, okay, kind of in tandem with some of the Mandoverse universe type stuff going on. So we know what the purpose is there. Book of Boba Fett, also self-explanatory. What is the Acolyte's purpose in this in this franchise? What is it trying to give us? And my first answer is it's trying to give us a look into how the Jedi's downfall really happened, but we have so many other things tied into it that are related but not related. So, for example, the Plagueis stuff. Are this could have been very easily been a story of Plagueis manipulating everything in the background to make his own acolytes to serve his purpose as he follows the grand plan. But that's not really realized in the Acolyte season one. And we kind of see some corruption of the Jedi, but we don't understand why Vanestra does some of what she does to cover it up and why they are more tolerant of this type of doing things. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then the other thing is this is a story explaining how to create life that kind of explains the Anakin thing about not having a father, being born from the Force, and his mother or whatever.
Yep.
Like, there's just so many things this season could have given us, and they tried to give us a lot of things at one time. But at the end of the season, and possibly the end of the series, what did we really gain outside of, okay, the Jedi are corrupt. We don't know why they're corrupt. We don't know what caused them to be corrupt. Are they all corrupt? Is it just one or two people that are corrupt? We don't really know. And then, okay, we have these twins. They're created from the Force, but so what? And then the Plagueis thing. Okay, cool. He's there. We already knew he was there in the background, but do more with him. Like, pick one thing and do it. Don't just try and do it all and hope to hit the mark on all of them. It just doesn't work. At least not with a 8 episode thing. If you had like 26 episodes like a typical anime, hell yeah, that'd been fine, but not in this.
Yeah, for sure. I I can kind of agree. Like it, and again, I don't want to disrespect Leslie Headland because by the way, I mispronounced her name earlier, and I do apologize for that. I don't want to disrespect her because, well, for starters, I mean, the fact that I found out that she's actually read a lot of Legends books, she does seem like a genuine Star Wars fan, and I can tell that she I I don't think this is just her being a bad writer. I think this is more of she had so many different ambitions and ideas that went into this show, but unfortunately when you want to do so much in a show, that can actually kind of hurt it, especially with the limited amount of top episodes that you have.
But
Like,
that's the very definition of a bad writer, Nate. Like, you can have all the ideas you want and the ambitions you want, but you have to know how to structure it in a way that makes sense and can be translated well, especially with a TV show, because you're not guaranteed season two anytime. So you have to leave yourself open to the possibility that you won't get a chance to tell the next part of the story.
I get okay, yeah, I guess that's fair.
So no, I will not give you that. Leslie did have writing problems here, and it's very apparent throughout.
I guess fair, but I don't want
Yeah.
to disrespect her too much. Like,
Oh no, I'm
yeah,
not disrespecting her. I'm giving what I consider an honest critique as somebody who's basically a reviewer.
yeah, I kind of, I just want to keep saying this. Like, I've been trying to make this clear on like some social media and all that. Like, all the people that are like harassing Amanda Amanda Stenberg and Leslie Headland, like saying like, "Oh my god, this show is like woke garbage and I hate it." I may have problems with the show, but I say to you exactly what Mr. Incredible said to Buddy in The Incredibles. You're not affiliated with me. Like,
No, no,
that's what
absolutely.
I have
I'm
to
not
say.
saying I hate Leslie. I think she deserves all the hate. But I think as a fan of most of my life, I'm entitled to say Leslie's writing in this season, and admittedly her writing team and whoever else is behind the production of this thing, they were not the best team to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. Um, and I think this would have gone a lot differently had the Acolyte been produced when Filoni had the realm of the entire creative process of Lucas.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think this is just a artifact of Lucas not allowing Filoni to have creative liberties up until now.
Mm-hmm.
So because I think Filoni would have tied things a lot better because he has a grand plan for the entire franchise, I think, and I hope, to eventually do something to make the sequels more bearable because right now they're terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, that's just my thoughts. That I think there's a lot of great promise here, and I think so. I'm not going to say I was wrong in the previous podcast where I said, "Oh, this is an 8 out of 10, this is a 9 out of 10, whatever." But I will say I think there are two scores to give the Acolyte. One score is for the Acolyte's attempt to give us information on things that maybe we were wanting more info on in the franchise as a whole, we didn't have yet, and also posing the questions that we didn't even think to ask. I think they did a really good job in that category because they brought up the concept more clearly of creating life from the Force, which is something that's only ever really been kind of briefly touched on in one line from the opera scene. I don't think any book in Disney canon has really talked about creating life from the
Nope.
Force.
Nope.
And I mean, I'd be surprised, honestly, Nate, if they even had something like that in Legends continuity.
That's possible, but again, it might be explored in the Plagueis novel, but that's
Yeah.
the only one that I would imagine. So yeah, I'm not. I don't think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, it brought up some good questions. I think it did a good job on that front of giving us a new thing to think about. Because, when we look at the sequels, one of the primary criticisms I read a lot on Reddit back in the Gap was, how dare they bring back Palpatine? How the hell do you do that? And then we see the Bad Batch start to explain Project Necromancer, which failed obviously, and the Acolyte giving some kind of idea of how else you can clone or create another version of yourself. So maybe this was a technique that Plagueis came up with, and he thought the Palpatine and Palpatine employed when he saw Project Necromancer fail. So maybe that's how he got a clone of himself to come out like 30 years later or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. But again, they had the right idea to try and bring up the question and the thought of what we're talking about here, but the writing was not great overall.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I the thing about this series, I want to say this. I really want to like this series. I really do,
Yeah.
because it has some legitimately good ideas. And here's the thing. I mean, I find the High Republic era. I mean, I'm still reading the very first book. I've gotten kind of behind in it, but I'm enjoying what I'm getting so far. I just feel like this show is trying to do too much, and that really hurts it. And
Yeah.
hopefully, this is just Leslie Headland, because I do hope that she gets another chance in Star Wars, because for all we know, this could just be her making a bunch of I don't want to say rookie mistakes, because I know that she's worked on other projects before, and she's been working as a writer in several other things, but just working with Star Wars, like this could just be just some issues with just starting off. I have a feeling she could be good, because there are good elements here. It's just I yeah, there's just a ton of issues here that prevent me from loving it completely. Um yeah, I
Yeah.
it's but now, would I say that this is the worst live action series that I've seen on Disney Plus? No. I would I don't want to count Andor, since I haven't seen the whole thing. Although it's really
One
boring,
day. One day.
but but the worst one, spoiler alert for when we eventually review that series, is Book of Boba Fett. Um this one is probably just ahead of it, but there's a huge gap between the Book of Boba Fett and this show, in my opinion.
Well, okay, so my thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett compared to this is the Book of Boba Fett was mainly just boring to me. It it didn't have bad writing per se. I just was not very invested in it because it didn't make me invested. There's nothing in it I was like, "Oh, that's a cool concept. That's a cool thing we can do." It was just kind of meh. And they didn't really try to do anything unique or interesting with it. And the only reason people liked the Book of Boba Fett, for those that did like it, was because of the Mandoverse season 2.5 that came in the middle of it. Um, but other than that, I mean, it's just a mess season. I wouldn't call it terrible by any means of the imagination. It was just boring. The Acolyte, on the other hand, um, it does definitively suffer from bad writing, and I think while it tries to do a lot more interesting stuff, the writing really bogged it down to make it uh some like lacking a lot of the desirability that you would expect from something like this with a lot of new ideas coming out of it.
Hmm.
So in my opinion, I'd honestly rank Book of Boba Fett ahead of it.
I think that's fair.
If we're
I don't
going
know.
by the S tier system, I would probably call Book of Boba Fett a C tier, and I'd probably call the Acolyte a D tier.
Yeah, I'm debating over whether I would put it in an C or a D tier. That's going to be a debate. I'm going to probably give myself a headache just trying to figure that out.
You give yourself a lot of headaches when you do this, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I'm still giving myself a headache over the Time Force versus Time Ranger thing. but
That's a timeless discussion that'll never end.
yeah, okay, it was only a matter of time before we got another dad joke. Uh,
I had to do something.
one other thing I want to say here, before we give our final score on you know, on the episode and this show, I guess you could say, just from a meta perspective, and I have a feeling that if Dave Filoni was running this show, he probably would have done something like this. But and again, I don't want to count this against the show, but I'm never going to have another opportunity to bring this up. I just kind of wish that they show Kiadi Mundi on a scene in Coruscant, which okay, that's fine, but couldn't you guys have shown some of the Jedi from the films that have been established in other mediums to have been around during this era? Because there's at least two Jedi from the prequels that I know, from the book I'm reading, that were around during the High Republic era. One of them being Yara El Poof. Sorry if I mispronounced that first one. He's a Jedi in the Council in the prequels. He has a really long neck. So he was established there, and also Oppo Rancisis. Again, I always get my tongue tied when I try to pronounce that guy's name, but yeah, he's this snake-like Jedi. I don't think Riz would have. I don't think Riz would recognize most like Star Wars lore nerds would probably know who I'm talking about. And again, Riz will get to see him in the Clone Wars, so he'll know who I'm talking about eventually. But yeah, he was established to exist during the High Republic. Like, I don't know. Like, could I have gotten some more? Could I have seen like some more characters? And I don't know. I really want to see. I would have liked to see these characters talk a little bit so that we kind of know what their voices sound like in canon. Yeah, I know that's just a little minor thing to harp on, but yeah, just I'm never going to get another opportunity to voice my complaint on that. Not enough to like hurt the show or anything. Just a little minor nitpick, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can respect that.
Um, but okay, first of all, what do we want to give the season finale out of 10?
I think I'm gonna go with a 5.
I'm probably gonna go with the. I want to go with the 6, just kind of because there's like there are things that this episode tries to do that I really want to get behind. I just the build up. I don't know if there was more build up, and then we got this episode. This would actually probably be like an 8 for me. But because there's no build up, that hurts it a lot. So I
Yeah,
probably go with the 6.
if they had some tighter writing, this could easily have been an 8 or a 9. But
Mm-hmm.
they fumbled the ball so badly, and they brought in a lot of really cool ideas that really seduced me into thinking this is gonna be a great TV show. But end of the day, this isn't a great TV show. It's meh. I mean, it's not even meh. I call meh to be like something boring. This is a little bit below meh. This is like blah.
Yeah.
Um. So I mean, it just it could have been a lot tighter. It could have been a lot better. There's a lot of things that could have easily been fixed with some better writing style and better format. Because again, the exposition for one episode at a time, going into a big flashback, I think that was very unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember a friend of mine that I was watching Acolyte with in the early parts of the season together, like every week. Well, not together, but like we get together after the Acolyte and talk about it. Um, After episode 2, he was like, "Oh man, Riz, Kelnaka's gonna die next week. He's gonna be dead. He's gonna be dead. I can call it now." Next year comes by, Kelnaka's still alive, because guess what? We did a whole flashback for the entire episode. We didn't do anything in the present. And that type of writing is just kind of weird to me. It doesn't really work. I mean, you could
Yeah.
do like flashbacks here and there, but don't do like a whole episode exposition explaining the entire story. Like, the point of a TV show to me is to show me the story from somebody's perspective, but the Acolyte is telling me the story from the entire perspective from the outsider looking in. And if we're going for like this noir mystery type thing that Leslie is pretty good at writing apparently, because I did just look at her Wikipedia page for the filmography, and a lot of her stuff either falls into like comedy, raunchy comedy, or mystery noir type stuff. Um, she has never done anything sci-fi or fantasy related before, so I can kind of see why she struggled a bit here, because there's a lot of concepts she brought up, but because she's never written a sci-fi fantasy type setting, I think she was ill prepared to do what she had to do.
Yep. But what do we want to get? What do you want to give the Acolyte as a whole out of 10?
Oh, I was giving it as a whole 5.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant. Were you asking me for what I give the episode?
Yeah.
Oh, the episode's probably a 6, but the entire season as a whole is a 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
For me, I gave the I mean, I gave the episode a 6. I'm probably going to go with a 6 for the series too. I want to be a little bit like I definitely get the criticisms that you're giving it, but I want to be a bit, and maybe it is just because I feel like let's be honest, you know, to bring up a different Star Wars YouTuber, Hello Greedo. He's actually a really good Star Wars YouTuber too. He he was giving his overall thoughts on the Acolyte after watching the first 2 episodes, and he kind of said that when he looks at like the two different scores that the Acolyte is given on Rotten Tomatoes, they're both kind of inaccurate. Like the critic score is 80%. I
Yeah,
think that's too high.
it is.
But then the audience score is probably down to like probably less than 10% by now, if we're being honest about it. But yet, no, 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 no. That is way too low. I would probably say that, honestly, Riz, I'm probably going to have to agree with you the more I think about it. This is probably a D tier series. It would probably be, I'd probably have it in the 60s personally.
Yeah,
I would ultimately give this show a 6 out of 10. I want to be a bit nicer to it just because the hate that some people like some people are trying to call this like the worst thing, like people are unironically trying to make this out to be worse than the holiday special. Like, no.
well,
And this is certainly not worse than the Rise of Skywalker either for me, but um
no, the Rise of Skywalker is the worst thing we've gotten from Star Wars, in my opinion.
but at the same time, yeah, I mean, when I watched the first like 3 or 4 episodes, I was really hyped for it, but everything after Kamir revealed himself as the Sith and just took Osha, that's when everything just kind of fell apart. And I want to give it the 6 out of 10 because the first half of the series genuinely had me gripped. But
Yeah,
then after those episodes, I don't want to say I completely lost interest, but that was just kind of where it was starting to lose me a lot. And I think the finale, like there were moments that I really liked in the finale, but would it save the series a whole and like bring it up from a 6 to an 8? No, it might bring it up from a 5 to a 6, but that's the best thing we're looking at. So yeah,
yeah,
ultimately, I have to. The more I think about it, Riz, yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. This is a D tier series, and I give it a 6 out of 10.
yeah, and just something that I do want to note. Um, I understand that our fellow fans out in the Star Wars fandom may be review bombing, might be angry about the season, but end of the day, we are simply content creators on a modest platform giving our opinions, and our opinions shouldn't be biased to be nicer to something just because our fandom as a whole are being completely unreasonable with giving it a 10 out of 100, for example. And we want to soften the blow by saying, well, it's more like a 6. If you think, if you have a number, you think you want to assign it, but you're adding a buffer to it to make it nicer because you want to offset the other people, then we're not really doing our job here, you know?
Yeah,
And so that's my only criticism of your score is I think I respect it. I think 6 is a good number for it. I just think 5 is what I want to give it personally. But if you're giving it a 6 just for the sake of offsetting our other fans, that tells me that your score is actually a little bit lower.
I think I would also just give it a 6, just because another reason why I don't want to rank it too low is because I want to give it credit for that first
Yeah.
half. That's what really gripped me. So yeah, I mean, the
No, and
more I
that
think about it, I could maybe even if I take away from the review bombing stuff, I would still probably give this a 6 out of 10.
and that's fair. And that's all I was asking to make sure that you're not just giving it that to offset our fandom. And that's totally fair. Again, I think a 5 or a 6 are both fair scores to give the Acolyte. The 10 is not warranted. The 8 is sure as hell not warranted. Um, so yeah, I think the happy medium that we landed on in the 5 and 6 territory is definitely more reasonable for what we got. And I will say, as one of my closing thoughts, while I didn't really like how the Acolyte ended and how it was being directed, I would like to see a second season, just to kind of flesh out some more of the story that we got here, and hopefully Leslie and her team will have learned from the mistakes, because I did see somewhere that Leslie has said if she's given a green light to write season 2, she will be looking at the feedback and criticisms that she's gotten on season 1, take it to heart, and try and do better for season 2.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
if she sticks to the words she gave, I'd be interested to see how she tries to redeem it for next season and make it better.
Yep. But one thing's for sure, like, I would much rather see a second season of this than probably watch season 2. I know that season 2 of Andor has already been confirmed, but yeah, I still, again, I'm gonna keep taking jabs at Andor until we eventually finish the whole thing. But yeah, I don't see what people what people see in that show. Uh, but
Okay.
yeah, do we have any other closing thoughts?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, that wraps up the Acolyte, guys. We hope if you guys have any different thoughts on the Acolyte, maybe you guys enjoyed it a bit more than we did, you can leave a comment down below if you're watching this on YouTube, though please keep the comments civil. We also, hope that you guys have enjoyed following us as we take a look at the Acolyte. But we are definitely not done bringing you any new Star Wars content for the year 2024. We have our Attack of the Clones review pre-recorded, and we'll be posting that as soon as we possibly can. And after that, with the Acolyte done, we are officially moving into the Clone Wars era. We're going to be taking a look at the book Brotherhood, followed by us taking a look at the 2003 Gendy Tartovsky series. Sorry, Riz. Um, and then
Lord have mercy.
we'll take a look at the glorious, majestic 2008 Dave Filoni series after that. Take a look at the Dark Disciple novel, as well as probably take a look at the Sons of Dathomir comic line, because that's also based off of another group of Lost Clone Wars episodes. So, yeah. Oh, and we also have to do the Bad Batch Season 3, too. So, yeah, we got a lot
Yeah.
of content to give you before we can get to Revenge of the Sith, to the point where we probably might not even get to Revenge of the Sith until next year. But that's good enough for us. So yeah, we hope you guys have enjoyed us taking a look at the Acolyte, and we'll see you guys next time when we take a look at Attack of the Clones. But until then, bye for now. If you enjoy us here on the Jedi Squadron, then please consider checking out our other content, including the Animated Classified podcast and the Toku Secrets podcast, which you can find on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or on our website, animesecrets.org. And if you have anything that you would like for us to review that hasn't already been covered here on the Squadron, feel free to leave any commentary, whether it be in the YouTube comments down below or by reaching out to us personally on our website. Also, please follow us on our social media pages, Anime Secrets, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to keep up with our content as we post it. If you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes, we thank you so much and ask you to please leave us a rating out of 5 stars. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, like the video, and leave any comments down below that you may give in your commentary or stuff you want us to review, and so on and so forth, and we will give your commentary a shout out on the Squadron, as we absolutely love to give our fans the shout outs that they deserve. With all that said, we thank you so much for listening to us here on the Jedi Squadron podcast, and we will see you next time for our next adventure through the amazing world of Star Wars. But until that time, the Squadron is preparing to enter hyperspace once again, so you all stay safe, we love you, and may the Force be with you.